done it, ladies and gentlemen. We have broken the code on Jade Helm, a 3-month investigative foray into the documents, into the research, and into our sources. That's coming up at the bottom of the hour. Phyllis Schlafly is joining us as well on the open border move. And they're going to be back this week with the TPP in Congress. Here is the investigative report.
Alabama Senator Jeff Sessions warns there will be another attempt in Congress on Tuesday to push through TAA and Fast Track Authority. If that happens, it will empower the president to form a Pacific Union encompassing 40% of the world's economy in 12 nations, each with one equal vote. Once the union is formed, foreign bureaucrats will be required to meet regularly to write the Commission's rules, regulations, and directives, impacting American jobs, wages, and sovereignty. Sessions said in a statement posted on his Senate webpage. The Trade Adjustment Assistance, or the TAA, would allegedly protect workers from the consequences of the TPA fast track. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi and House Speaker John Boehner crafted TAA as a compromise to nudge Democrats who fear a backlash from constituents. TAA, however, would not protect workers as transnational corporations continue to pillage industries and move jobs offshore under TPA and fast track. Sessions writes, Fast Track will not only apply to the Pacific Union, but can expedite an unlimited number of yet unseen international compacts for 6 years. There are already plans to advance through Fast Track, the Trade-in Services Agreement, the goal of which includes labor mobility among more than 50 nations, further eroding the ability of the American people to control their own affairs. The globalists are using trade deficits and labor mobility to further reduce wages of American workers. TPA would extend and increase the corrosive effect of job losses begun under NAFTA. Between 1979 and 1994, trade eliminated 2.4 million jobs in the U.S., wrote Robert E. Scott, an economist for the Economic Policy Institute, in 1998. Growing trade deficits were responsible for most of these job losses, which were concentrated in manufacturing because most trade involves the sale of manufactured goods. NAFTA added to the flow of jobs out of the U.S. by encouraging firms to move production to Mexico and Canada. Our trade deficit with both countries increased from $16 billion in 1993 to $48 billion in 1996 in constant 1987 dollars. The U.S. lost 395,000 jobs as a result of the NAFTA deficits. Japan and Mexico eventually lost manufacturing to China. In 2013, the overall U.S. trade deficit with China expanded to $315 billion. That big drain tends to slow U.S. economic growth at a time when our government debt is huge and unemployment is high. Establishment economists routinely state globalist free trade is healthy for the economy and creates domestic jobs. Former Assistant Secretary of the Treasury for the Reagan administration, Paul Craig Roberts, wrote, "The claim that jobs offshoring by U.S. corporations increases domestic employment in the U.S. is one of the greatest hoaxes ever perpetrated. Over the last decade, the net new jobs created in the U.S. have nothing to do with the multinational corporations. The jobs consist of waitresses and bartenders, healthcare and social services, retail clerks, and while the bubble lasted, construction. These are not the high-tech, high-paying jobs that the new economy promised, and they are not the jobs that can be associated with global corporations. Moreover, these domestic service jobs are themselves scarce," Sessions writes. While elites dream of a world without borders, voters dream of a world where the politicians they elect put this country's own citizens first. The movement among Americans toward a decent, honest populism, toward a refocusing on the needs of American citizens and American interests, grows stronger by the day. Every vote to come before Congress, beginning with the next fast-track push, will face this test. Does your plan strengthen or weaken the social and economic position of the loyal, everyday working American? John Bound for Infowars.com.
We'll be back with the full transmission. It's a special transmission. Phyllis Schlafly, pretty much the founder of what became the libertarian constitutional movement in this country. You could argue maybe Barry Goldwater's the real founder, but she is the progenitor of the youth movement that became the modern constitutional / libertarian movement. She will be joining us, no longer a young woman, coming up at the start of the next hour to talk TPP and Hillary's plan to win the presidency by stuffing ballot boxes with illegal aliens voting, being given voter ID cards, driver's license, you name it. Simply outrageous. Then at the bottom of the next hour, we're going to be joined by Rob Dew in studio, back from Bilderberg, to get his reflections on the globalist confab and how much exposure took place this year, a big victory for the people. And Paul Watson from London joining us via Skype. Then we have Dr. Edward Group joining us to take your questions, your comments, and to talk about really something that's revolutionary, that's undoubtedly the most dramatic one-time health action I've ever taken in my life, hands down. And this happened about 6 months ago, and then it happened again about 3 months ago, and it's really private, but it's so dramatic, I'm going to talk about it coming up in the third hour today. And I'm just going to stop right there and leave it at that. But it is dramatic. And about 98% of people that do it have the same results. If you don't have the results, you have got a major problem. And I never do cliffhangers, but I don't want to get into it now because I've gotten to the point of talking about it, and I really don't want to. And I wanted to kind of write some notes up. I've been procrastinating about how I want to get into this, but it's dramatic. And it's inexpensive, and it's easy. In fact, you can do this without ever buying anything from InfoWarsStore.com. So it's not a pitch, but it is a pitch. And when I heard this 6 months ago and did this, I mean, I rolled my eyes. I said, yeah, right. Yeah, right. Sure. Even though I trusted Anthony Gucciardi and Dr. Group and others, and people told me, oh, yeah, you haven't heard of that? And then when I did it, it was like 6, 7 days in, I'm like, well, I hadn't seen this happen yet. And then it happened. I'm going to leave it there until the third hour. Everybody's been talking about the bad feeling they've got. The feeling of wanting to do something, the feeling of wanting to fix things. It's never been more intense, not just with myself, but my family, everyone I know, people at grocery stores, people at restaurants, people at church, people that don't know who I am. George Norrie was on yesterday talking about it. He's been feeling it for years. It's intensifying. What is it? It's the threat of World War III. The head general of NATO says they're preparing for open war with Russia. That's never happened in the history of NATO. We have Pat Buchanan out in his syndicated column saying is a third world war inevitable. He has another article on, is a third world America inevitable, that ties into all that. Continuing, U.S. may send F-22 fighter jets to Europe to counter Russian threat. A senior U.S. Air Force official called the current situation with Russia the biggest threat on her mind. It's funny with this Buchanan story. I saw a story he did a few weeks ago about the situation with Russia and how it could lead to war, and then I was trying to search it and print it, and then printed a wrong one about is America becoming third world, and I read the headline and was confused. But here are the Russian articles. The Moscow Times, Putin says Russia is beefing up its nuclear arsenal. Here's another story out of RT. U.S. may send F-22 fighter jets to Europe to counter Russian threat. Meanwhile, Obama has been bombing Libya to supposedly take out the leadership of the Wahhabist al-Qaeda ISIS radicals that they helped put in charge. And if you go back 4.5 years ago, Hosni Mubarak, the American ally and leader, the dictator, but America's friend, who'd stabilized that country for 34 years, and Christians and Muslims could live side by side, Shiites and Sunnis could live side by side, and their economy was stabilized in the most populous nation in the Middle East. It's technically part of Africa. And he wouldn't go along with removing Muammar Gaddafi, who for 8 years had invested in the West, opened up to the West, apologized for stuff he did decades before, and basically tried to westernize. They set him up, and now they admit that Libya is a failed state. They say it's an accident. No, the plan was to destabilize and wreck the country. And that's another thing Hillary Clinton oversaw and that she's quite proud of. So, meanwhile, there is a huge expansion of tanks and troops, U.S. military, piling in to Ukraine right now, with the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Samantha Powers, giving very provocative speeches from Ukraine. It's really amazing to see this happening. We're going to be drilling more into that today. Speaking of Phyllis Schlafly coming up, 121 murders have been attributed to illegals released by Obama administration just in the last year. And that's just what they can attribute to it. Even bigger news, Obama pushes Internet ID verification in response to NSA hacking. We told you that was coming. For at least 7 years, all new Microsoft software that connects to your keyboard has a thumbprint biometric identification system in it, and a lot of the keyboards already have it on it, but it's not been adopted because the public doesn't like it. But the global move from China to the United States, from Germany to Australia, is an Internet ID that's biometrically accessed either by face print, voice print, or thumb, or index fingerprint. And then once they have that, Internet taxes kick in. And then they can track everywhere you go. Then under TPP and other agreements, 3 strikes, no judge, no jury, corporate boards complain on you, like YouTube. You get 3 strikes on YouTube, you're banned. And already through Google ID, they can pretty much ban you. You've got to get somebody else to go log in with their Google ID to get a YouTube account for you. Well, in the future, that won't be happening as easily. And people won't want to sign up on the internet for you because they know they can get the strikes. This is the global admitted plan. And they get this Internet ID through, that is half the battle for them to end freedom on the web. I mean, it's here. Along with the FCC taking over and along with the Internet kill switches, I mean, it's all in place now. Now they just got to sell it. How do you think when you're driving down the road, your GPS tells you if there's traffic up ahead second to second now? It's wirelessly dialed in, and is communicating with an international grid. Everything's being tracked. And it has wonderful, wonderful attributes to it. But it's all double-edged. It's a Trojan horse in the very classic sense. We're going to be breaking that down. Huge news. In fact, all the news is so incredible. I don't know what our top story is. Probably the Russia situation. Pope Francis warns of destruction of Earth's ecosystem in leaked encyclical. That broke yesterday. Now more of it's out. Obviously leaked on purpose to create a bunch of hype because, oh, it's leaked. It must be really interesting. We're going to be going over that. It's more class warfare from the Marxist. And I've never been a Catholic basher. I don't bash different religions. I don't bash different faiths. I got a lot of Catholic friends. The Catholics I know are salt of the earth, libertarian, conservative, pro-life people. But this Pope is a world government promoting, anti-gun, global government carbon tax guy, and it's sick. And they had a coup to kick out the last Pope using scandals, and they put this guy in, and notice the socialist media suddenly loves him. He's creating class warfare, and the fact that they put a Pope in that's pushing basically communism shows you the globalists are moving into their end game right now. That's coming up. And as far as I'm concerned, this Pope needs an exorcism. Now, we're going to go ahead and play a trailer for some of the biggest breaking news we've ever had on Jade Helm.